Welcome to the Pitmaster Podcast. We're barbecue competition competitors that aim to share information, advice, tips, and tall tales about our favorite pastime. Head over to thepitmasterpodcast.com for all things Pitmasters, or follow us on your favorite social media platform.
We won the Open in '98, and that was with 400 teams.
The thing is, when people tell me, hey, I did your recipe, and my family thinks I'm amazing now.
Right? Everything barbecue is we are arguing, and Jerry spring up is like, I'm not going to her door, and I say, Sue, got some barbecue for you. And she say, thank you, Tuffy. And it just kept going and going and going, and then as time got further along, started winning and doing real well, and I developed a lot of rubs and seasonings, and it snowballed from there.
Damon had this ridiculous sense of being able to look at a rub and he can name it. I'll never forget, so he looks there and he goes, hey man, I see what you're doing over there. Why you got that Sunburn Docks and Plowboy's bottle? And I was like, are you kidding me?
Here are the hosts of the Pitmaster Podcast, Rusty Monson, head Pitmaster of Salt City Barbecue, and the two-time grand champion Pitmaster of Smoke Ain't No Joke Barbecue, the Anthony Luan.
All right, everybody, on this podcast, we have Carey Bringle, Peg Leg Porker. You might know him from Peg Leg Porker out of Memphis or Nashville, Tennessee. World famous barbecue joint. Tell us about yourself, Carey. Where did you come from?
Well, I was born and raised in Nashville. My family's all from West Tennessee, so my mom and dad grew up there. My grandfather was from Covington, right outside of Memphis. And when my dad went to Vanderbilt, he was a mechanical engineer, and he just stayed in Nashville. So that's where I was born and raised. And then I went back and forth to Memphis often to go see my grandparents, and then actually lived in Memphis for a couple of years after college. And so, you know, my style of barbecue is West Tennessee style. That's what I grew up with. And it was much more limited back then on what was on the menu. So that's kind of what we modeled the Peg Leg Porker after. It was modeled after places I grew up going to in West Tennessee and Memphis in particular.
Cool. And so you didn't start in barbecue. I mean, you kind of come from a family of barbecue enthusiasts, but you started in IT, more in the medical field. How did that translate into a barbecue restaurant?
Well, I'd always had a strong interest in barbecue. My grandmother would send me clippings of anything that was in the commercial appeal in the Memphis newspaper about barbecue. She'd send me the clippings. We'd go eat at the restaurants all around Memphis, and barbecue was something that was very important to my family. And so it was something I grew up with. I learned from my Uncle Bruce. And when I got out of college, I went into clinical lab sales. I was working with SmithKline Beecham. And that's when I moved to Memphis, and I was actually selling clinical laboratory services in Memphis. And about that time is when I went down to Memphis in May and visited a team that my wife's cousins were on, and that team was called the Rolling Wonder Pigs. And I went down there and had never been to Memphis in May before, and we had a blast. In fact, the team had so much of a blast that we got asked not to come back the next year. And so the Rolling Wonder Pigs got kicked out, and they had about a 4 or 5 year old child on the second story scaffold holding up a sign saying, "Show us your tits." And so that did not go over really well with the officials. And that was the end of the Rolling Wonder Pigs. So the following year, I joined the team. I told them that year, I was like, I got to come and, I got to be a part of this. And so that following year, I joined the team, and we came back as Hog Wild. And so that was the birth of Hog Wild. And the team captains were Ernie Meller, who still has Hog Wild Catering and a movable feast in Memphis, and Trip Murray. And Trip works for FedEx now, but they were the team captains, and there were a lot of those folks, original team members then, or that had been members of the Rolling Wonder Pigs, and now we were Hog Wild. And so I cooked with Hog Wild for 12 years, I think, before I started Peg Leg Porker and started cooking under my own team name. But I'd always had a restaurant. Once I really got into barbecue and I'd been into it my whole life, but when I really started getting serious about it, and that's when I started thinking about a restaurant. And it's something that I wanted to do, but I knew that it would probably be a while I tried to, start a family and make a living and buy houses and, that type of thing. So finally, after healthcare, I went into IT and worked with Verizon /MCI /WorldCom /Digix, selling contact center services. I was not on the wireless side. I was on the wireline side, and I was a consultant that sold software and hardware and professional services. And, I'd always knew that I wanted to do something different. I had started several companies along the way. And so starting a new business was not new to me. And so finally, after leaving Verizon, I made the decision that I was going to open the restaurant. And I consulted for the 2 years leading up to opening the restaurant. And that gave me the flexibility to build out the restaurant while I still was able to make a living. And I did that until I opened up.
Did you do catering at all before the restaurant opened, or just?
Yeah, I did. So along the way, we would cater for friends' weddings or for events. We were building smokers in my driveway. You can go out on YouTube and see some of our old smoker build videos. We actually shot a series of videos. One of them was, the first series was turning an old refrigerator from the bar that we drank at into a vertical smoker. And then the next one, we built the vertical smoker from scratch. And we still have that smoker. And then we built a trailer from the ground up. And so we were using that to cater some, do some events. And then I would go to the local bar, the End Zone in my neighborhood, and set up in the parking lot and cook ribs and sell those ribs in the parking lot.
So did you have a recipe kind of down pat by then, or is this kind of the process that it took you to develop your own rub?
When I first broke off from the Hog Wild team, the first thing that we did was I didn't break loose from Hog Wild. I just did. There was a competition that had started in Nashville, and it was a KCBS competition, which I had never done in my life, didn't even know anything about. And we entered that thing. It was out at Nashville Shores, and I put together a ragtag group of folks from Nashville. We were out there in an RV watching Jerry Springer, drinking kegs of beer and getting rowdy. And they came by and they said, "It's quiet time." And I said, "What the fuck are you talking about? There's no quiet time in barbecue." And they were like, "Oh, with KCBS there is." And I said, "Well, I don't know what the hell's going on here, but somebody has put a fucking wet blanket on this shit. This is I'm supposed to be having a good time, and we're right at the pinnacle here. We just got this party started." And it's actually a funny story because next to us was this group, and they had set up and they had these, like Weber bullets and stuff. And we had borrowed the smoker from a guy that was the organizer, Arlie Bragg. And Arlie was putting on his contest, and I borrowed his smoker. It was a David Close Pit. And these folks next to us set this tent up, like right on, just on top of our smoker. And they had another tent, and there was two couples. And they were real serious and everything. And they were like, "All right, we're going to sleep." And I was like, "Well," and they kept coming out of the tent. They were like, "Hey, can y'all be quiet?" And we're like, "Man, what are you talking about? Be quiet. Why are you going to bed at 10 o'clock? Everybody's supposed to be having fun. I'm used to Memphis in May, and this shit, we're starting Jello shots right now." And so we went back and forth, and they wanted to sleep, and we were kind of being assholes. And, we were real young, and we were clanking that damn firebox like ringing a fucking dinner bell, man. I tell you, the damn slamming that lid. And we were like, "We're just checking the cooker." And it turns out I found out probably 15 years later that that person beside me, it was Ray Lampy. It was Ray and I are good friends now, but he was the one. He was just starting out doing some of these competitions, and that was my first KCBS competition. And we found out later at Big Apple Barbecue, we were visiting, and Pat Martin was talking to him, and he says, have you ever met Carey? And he goes, you not that peg leg porker. You didn't do a contest back at Nashville Shorts. I go, oh, I just buckled over laughing. I said, man, yes, I did. I'm sorry about that. My bad.
Oh man, that's funny. Apparently you didn't get kicked out. So you're running
Arlie,
50-50.
Arlie kept threatening to kick me out. And I said, you're going to look like a real dumbass with me using your cooker and you kicking me out of the competition. I said, you better not kick me out. And so we did shitty. We did shitty in the competition. I'd never even seen a brisket before at that point. We bought just this little old flat. We had made slits in it, put garlic in it. The chicken, the guy put in charge of the chicken he didn't get up in time to get that chicken done. And I woke his ass up and he was hungover and he flopped out of that trailer. And I said, you better get that shit done. And we fired up that firebox and he put it in an aluminum pan and put it right on the coals in the firebox. And that damn pan melted up into the bottom of that fucking chicken. It was awful, man. Well, we had a good time. Then my buddy left his daddy's RV out there for about 2 weeks. They must have called us 3 times to come pick that RV up. But that was the birth of the peg leg porkers, and that was when I first came up with the name, and then from there I developed a dry seasoning and rub. I started calling some people to be sponsors, and I called Evan Lobel. I knew from the meat industry that I had dabbled in some. I'd had a gourmet mail order a food company, and Evan Lobel of Lobel's in New York was a close friend, and he became a sponsor of the team, and he would come down to Memphis in May with us, and they encouraged me to do my dry seasoning and sauce. And so I sat in my kitchen one night and I formulated it in probably about 3 hours, and it's been the same recipe ever since.
So talk to us about a dry rub, because it's not what people think. So what is a Tennessee dry rub?
Well, so mine is not actually a rub. Mine is a barbecue seasoning. So there's a difference between a rub and a seasoning, and ours is based on a method that was developed by the Rendezvous by Charlie Burgess, and they were actually Greeks. And so when he started cooking ribs, they had these old coal chutes in the Rendezvous, and he started cooking ribs. He was originally a sandwich shop, and they charbroil them, and then they mop them with a vinegar mop, and then when they hit the plate, they'd hit them with this seasoning. And so that's what we have is a dry seasoning. We cook our ribs, and the difference between us and Rendezvous is they charbroil their ribs. They cook them pretty hot and fast over hickory charcoal. We smoke our ribs, and so ours are smoked, and they're done a little bit slower, longer cooked. We only use kosher salt on that rib. We don't rub it down with anything. And then when it comes off the smoker, right before it hits the plate, it gets hit with our seasoning. And so it's a barbecue seasoning, which has the flavor of barbecue. It's a sauce replacement. By not cooking it, you've got the brightness of the spices. And so you've got all the full flavor of those freshly ground spices that you get on top of the pork. And you've just smoked the pork with the salt. And so you get the full flavor and body of the pork. You're not trying to cover it up or alter that flavor. With a rub, you're going to pre-rub that meat. You might even leave it on there for several hours or 24 hours. And it's going to alter the flavor of that meat. And that's going to typically be more of a sticky or sweet type rib. A lot of people will rub a rib down. They'll smoke it. They won't put any sauce on it, and they'll call it a dry rib. And that may be a great rib, but that's not a real West Tennessee dry rib.
Nice. I bet you get a lot of consistency that way too. That way, because you're not rubbing these ribs down, and depending on how much rub you put on can vary the flavor. You're just doing straight kosher salt, and then you're getting the same product every single time.
Well, we'd like to think we get the same product every single time. You know, it's tough when on a Saturday we'll do 400 to 450 racks of ribs, and so you know, you can't get it perfect every time, but we try our best to get them right. And it's nice. What's nice about what we do is that there's really nobody else in Nashville that does it that way. And we wanted to keep that niche of something that I loved and not really try and be everything to everybody. So we don't even have a sweet and sticky rib on our menu. You get It's a peg leg rib. It's a dry rib. That's what you're getting at peg leg.
And you just do pork because you always say if you want brisket, go to Texas. So,
I do. Yeah, I do. And actually, we're about to open another restaurant. It won't be a peg leg, and it'll have brisket. So now I'll say, if you want brisket, go to my other restaurant.
There you go. That's awesome.
You know, when I was growing up in Tennessee, nobody served brisket. They just didn't. They'd say it's a steak, it's not barbecue, and go to Texas. And I love brisket, and I've had some great brisket. But I think barbecue restaurants nowadays get caught in the trap of trying to be everything to everybody. And with peg leg, we had a single focus in mind, and that was to serve what we consider real Tennessee barbecue. And so we're serving what I grew up with, and nobody at that time served brisket. Everybody's kind of been pressured to serve brisket nowadays because customers ask for it. And we've sort of made a statement by sticking to our guns and saying, look, this is what we do, and we think we do it better than anybody else in Nashville. You know, if you want brisket or something, there's plenty of other great choices in town. But if you want a true West Tennessee dry rib or barbecue chicken, then this is the place to come.
Yeah. And so one question I have is, I've always wondered this because we're in Utah, right? We don't have, now we invented fry sauce. Okay. So ketchup and mayonnaise, we invented that. That's Utah food. Okay, that's it.
I like it.
So in Tennessee, you got a certain Memphis style barbecue. You hear St. Louis style barbecue, Texas style barbecue. Where do you think that comes from? Because Vergas did it in 1950. Then the book, The History of Barbecue, he says in there that, you know, you're not going to recognize the barbecue now that was 50 years ago. Now he's been doing it for 50 years, but even in Texas, Aaron Franklin's moved that a little bit to, you know, into the spotlight, and that's still Texas barbecue. Where do you think that comes from? How does a place like Utah become a certain like Utah barbecue? You know, what does that take?
Well, Tennessee has a long tradition of barbecue. So, you know, I think when Vergas did it, he brought something so different to the market that it created its own genre. You know, Michael Simon opened up a barbecue place in Cleveland, and he's doing his own types of sauces and his own sort of styles, and he's going to be the kind of the defining face of Cleveland barbecue. You know, who would have thought? But, you know, Michael went out on that limb and said, I think I can produce great product here, and he does. And so he kind of wanted to define a movement and say, this is not just for your typical four regions. And, you know, you have the whole hog in Carolinas, and, you know, you had a sort of an origin of barbecue, not necessarily in Carolina, but they were kind of the first to adopt it after DeSoto and his crew learned it from the Indians and sort of brought it up the East Coast, I guess. That migration went over to Tennessee. In fact, my ancestors settled in Tennessee in 1827, and they had come from North Carolina. So you have whole hog in Tennessee, but it's very different. When you go from Lexington or Henderson in Tennessee, where whole hog was dominant, over to Memphis, it's all shoulder and ribs. And so, you know, the different people along the way have broken out with a certain style and said, this is what we're going to have to define it. Aaron Franklin didn't define brisket, but Aaron Franklin, I think, tried to take it to a new level and raise awareness of it to where it sort of brought that renaissance back to Texas. And that's what we're trying to do with peg leg and with some of the new pitmasters in Tennessee, and not just in Nashville, but across the state. You got some younger guys coming up in Memphis that have done great things. You got Zach Parker's taken over Scott's, where his father Ricky was the owner and pitmaster. We got a new Blake Stoker is doing some stuff up in Martin, Tennessee, where he's doing a Texas style up there and killing it. And he's about to build a restaurant. He's been operating out of a trailer. And so it's exciting to see some folks do some new things. And I would say that what defines Tennessee barbecue is pork and chicken. And whether it's dry ribs like I make, or whether it's a whole hog like Zach makes, Tennessee is really pork and chicken. That's where it is.
Rusty, to kind of hit on that, I feel like Utah is a very sweet state. We're brown sugar on everything, honey on everything, agaves and butter. I think we're a really sweet state. We don't have a lot of that hot. We don't have the tang like they do back in Tennessee because we're not using vinegar. So I don't know, Carey, what do you think about sweet barbecue? We use a lot of like brown sugars and honeys out here, hardly any heat.
Sure. Yeah. Look, I put on my cups. We do custom cups, and so we make these things, and that's really a Memphis thing. And on the last batch of cups that we had, it says it's not a requirement for you to hate someone else's barbecue in order to love mine. People think because I do dry ribs that's all that I like, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I like all styles of barbecue. And I really like a sweet rack of ribs. I like a sugary, sweet, glazed, sticky rib, when I'm in that mood. And so you get, barbecue and bourbon and both get heated. People are so opinionated over both of those genres that they just want to come out and mine's the best and fuck everybody else. And, it doesn't have to be like that. I like going and eating at all different types of restaurants. So why would I not like all different types of barbecue? I can appreciate the nuances of the different regions and the different styles. And I appreciate what some new people are bringing to the market with some things that I would have never considered traditional barbecue. But, it's barbecue. It's just a different style.
See, we're going to turn our fry sauce into barbecue sauce, and it's going to be Utah fry sauce barbecue sauce.
All we got to do is throw some brown sugar in there, and we'll call it that one.
It's going to be weird. You rub shoulders with a lot of great chefs. You on your podcast, which we'll talk about later, but is a great podcast. I'm going to say this 100 times because I had just recently discovered it, and if you guys have an hour to kill, it's probably one of the better hours to spend. Especially if you're someone like me. I come from the restaurant business. You guys talk about literally everything. So it's really cool. But where do you think barbecue stands in the culinary world? And where do you think that people like Aaron Sanchez and people like that who've been on your show, where do we stand as barbecuists in the culinary world? Because you've cooked at the James Beard House 3 times, and that's a pretty prestigious place to cook. What kind of respect do you see you get being a barbecue man?
I've got a lot of respect in the culinary world. I think that has probably changed over the last 10 years. I think beforehand, chefs would say, barbecue, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Somebody's in the back room doing that. Not a big deal. They might like it, but they really didn't respect it. I think that the respect part has really come over the past 10 years. And that's been as some historic organizations or some writers have sort of shed light on what it takes to make great barbecue, and they've shed light on some of the legends that were making barbecue in the back room that never got the attention that they deserved. Being a chef and being a pitmaster, 2 very different things. And when I'm in people's kitchens, a lot of times they'll call me chef, and I stop and I say, look, you're making me uncomfortable. I'm not a chef. I didn't go to school for that, and I didn't spend 20 years in the kitchen learning how to make various sauces and different recipes. I cook barbecue, and that's what I do. I take it seriously, and we try and do the best that we can. So I think that the respect for pitmasters has really come about in the past 10 years, and you can see it in the James Beard nominations, and I've been very vocal, and not all of my peers agree with me on this, that if the Beard Awards are going to continue to nominate pitmasters, I think they need to put it in a separate category, and they need to have a pitmaster category. Now, that would be just one pitmaster for the whole United States, not one for every region. But they broke up pastry chefs and bakers. I don't know why in the world they wouldn't break out pitmasters, because what we do is very different. It's not less, it's different. And so to compare somebody that's cooking barbecue like me against a 3-star Michelin chef, I don't think is a fair comparison. It's very, very different what we do. And like I said, I don't think it's less. I think that it's different. And so I appreciate the respect that these chefs have given us. And it's allowed me to go and cook and be around a lot of brilliant people that are amazing chefs. Whereas before, probably 10 years before that, they tell me to get the hell out of their kitchen. I'm just a barbecue guy, so it's amazing where barbecue has come in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's just that people didn't really understand it. It's like, hey man, go boil your ribs and then finish them off with a sauce. We'll be over here cooking, right?
Yeah,
and we'll be doing these bechamel sauces. You just,
Well, I think the Pitmasters also kind of evolved into more of like the kitchen side chef, not quite the chef, like no training, but they've expanded their horizons a little bit on being able to cook from just open fire cooking. Example, all three of us are all Pitmasters, but Rusty and I both ventured into this whole SCA style competition cooking. And I'm willing to bet a lot of us on the SCA competition scene could cook a steak better than most chefs. That's how I feel. I've had some terrible steaks in my life, so that's why I feel that level. but it's definitely put us onto a horizon where we're expanding just beyond smoked meats. We're actually moving into more progressive open fire cooking as a Pitmasters.
Yeah, and I think you've seen a lot of that again in the last 5 to 10 years. And I think that you've had some folks that were classically trained as chefs open up barbecue restaurants and have some good success by doing something a little bit different or tweaking something. And I think that's helped raise the profile and the level. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of these barbecue restaurants have been very successful. And in the time that they're building up a successful audience, some of these chefs will have a restaurant go up and go down, at the whim of the people, because they either are or aren't the latest and greatest. Whereas barbecue has typically been, if you're running a good, consistent barbecue restaurant, you typically going to run consistent for a while. The fact that what we do is done over such a long period of time, and there is no do-over. If we fuck up the barbecue for the day, it's done. The restaurant's closed. That's not the case if I screw up, a duck breast that I'm searing in a skillet. I can just pull out a new duck breast and I can have another one ready in 10 minutes. And so I think when chefs really started to see what went into it, when it was publicized a lot more about what went into barbecue, they started to respect it more because they understood that either you got it right over that period of time or you were done with it.
Right. So speaking of which, of making sure you've done it right, you're not much on the competitive side like Rusty and I and a lot of other people, but you do compete in MBN, mostly Memphis and May style cooking. Out west, we don't even have one of those competitions. Can you explain that style of competition cooking, and just out here for the Westerners that never partake in one of those events before?
Sure. So the MBN network was born out of Memphis and May. It used to be the Memphis and May network. And so when Memphis and May started, they, a few years later, as they were trying to get more people to come and compete in it, they developed a circuit around the Southeast of these small towns that wanted to have similar barbecue competitions and feed into Memphis and May and sort of be part of that whole world championship. Several years back, I don't know if it was 15 years back or what, I forget, MBN or Memphis and May said, we're going to abandon that circuit. We don't want to do that anymore. We want to focus on our competition, and that's it. And they dropped that network. So some of the people who'd been training the judges, Randy McGee and several others, didn't feel like that was right. They thought, we can't abandon these small towns. For some of them, this is the biggest fundraiser they have all year. This is their annual celebration. And so we have to support these guys. So they formed the MBN. It never had the organizational structure like a KCBS does, which was very formal and a board and all this. MBN, they were flying by the seat of their pants because they had to pick up the ball, like that and run with it, or it was going to be gone. And so they did that, and that's where MBN came from. It still never has gotten it still never has gotten a formal enough organization to really expand it as much as I think they could have. But the MBN is because it was born out of Memphis and May. It's a strictly pork competition, and you do whole shoulder or whole hog or ribs. And those are the three categories. Now, on a regional competition, like on a circuit competition, you can cook all three. So you can do all three. But with each one, you do a blind turn-in, and then you do 3 on-site judges. And you have a 15-minute presentation for each one of those judges. And so if you want to explain something or something didn't turn out like you thought it should, you got a chance to tell the judge and gloss it over or dazzle them with something else. I always liked that part about Memphis and May and the MBN circuit, because that personal interaction and telling the story, that's kind of what barbecue's all about. And so it was that camaraderie. It was that fun. You could lie. You could tell whatever. There's no rule against telling a total bullshit story. In fact, it's encouraged. And so these things got real creative and real fun, and judges had fun, and so that's where the MBN network was born, and what they do. It's evolved a little since then. MBN competitions were very expensive to compete in. They had high entry fees. You had to have a lot of judges, and if you were cooking all three categories, it could cost you a lot of money, and it took a lot of effort. And because of that on-site judging, a lot of people were dressing up tents, hanging chandeliers and shit, pictures on the walls, whatever. But MBN had always been, I don't mind sharing with my neighbor. It wasn't real secretive. When I went to do the KCBS competition, everybody's sort of huddling over and going, don't look at my shit, don't shig on me or whatever the hell they call it. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird, because we're used to going, hey, man, if you got in the finals and I didn't, what do you need? How can we help you? Do we have something that you're missing? And so I always liked that style of competition. Now, at Memphis in May, you have to choose one category. And so each team can only compete in one category, either whole hog, shoulder, or ribs. And I competed in the shoulder category for, 25 years. And then I started doing 2 teams and doing 2 categories, but I had to have separate teams and separate entry fees and everything. It was very expensive. But I learned that trick from fucking John David Wheeler. That's how he won all those damn trophies, is because he had a team in every category. And so now we've switched over to whole hog. And I was tired. We were always next to Chris Lilly, and Chris was always beating us at damn Memphis in May. So I got tired of having a superior product, but still being beat by Chris Lilly. And so I moved from the shoulder category over to whole hog, and we've enjoyed doing the whole hog category. I like it better, quite frankly.
Nice. We had Chris on.
Chris is a great guy. He's a good friend of mine.
We had Chris on. He was telling us about how he does pork shoulder. I'm like, he just wipes it up over there. Right. How many people do the whole hog? Is that really popular? I'd imagine there'd be like 400 rib guys, 200 pork shoulder guys, and 3 whole hog guys. Is that kind of how it is?
It's about like that. The rib category is the biggest, because everybody can party all they want, and they only have to dedicate about 4 hours to cooking. And then the shoulder category is fairly big, because most people are used to cooking whole shoulders. And then whole hog, I want to say, had, out of like 270 teams at Memphis, whole hog had, I think, 37 teams last year, maybe 38.
Wow. So my question is, does the little guy really have a shot at Memphis in May? Because I was listening to Malcolm Reed's podcast, and he says he spends a minimum of $10,000 on his setup at Memphis and May. Like, does a tent guy have a shot to really win, or is it because I noticed a lot of them have the fancy setups.
We probably spend $25,000.
Yeah.
So
I think he's had his numbers from his wife.
Probably.
Yeah. There's a backyard category that you can compete in at Memphis and May that doesn't, but it still costs a lot. Look, Memphis and May is an expensive competition. I think my entry fee this year with our just the entry fee, not even a tent or floor, I think was $4,500 this year. So it is not for the faint of heart. You better get you some sponsors, or you better have some deep pockets. It is not cheap to go down there and compete. It's a question as to who can win. I've always said, I've always been vocal that there's a lot of politics at Memphis in May, and I've seen judges do things that I didn't think were so copacetic. I'm a judge. My wife's a judge. But it is what it is. The year that you think that you did your best, maybe your worst. And the year that you think that you did your worst, maybe your best. When the first time that Hog Wild took a second place finish in shoulder, we had a grease fire and we burned the shit out of the outside of those shoulders. They were black as soot. And we ended up making the finals and taking second place. They tasted great, but they looked like shit. But it's all, you get to explain that away to the judges when they're there. And so that's part of it that I kind of like. But that part also comes with some politics,
You're like, we rub it in charcoal at the end. That's what we like to do.
It's a new technique we developed. It's called blackened shoulder.
That's right. So is it really that expensive? $4,500, and then you have to doll it up. I mean, I've seen a lot of videos on it, and then you got like Myron Mix, and he's got "Come On Into My Space," and he's got the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
And is that what costs the most?
Then the tent and the flooring is another $4,000, and then you got liquor and anything else that you bring down. It's just not. It's not cheap. You got hotel rooms, you got everything. Now we used to have some great sponsors. We still have some. Even though I have my own spirits company and my own bourbon line, which we bring down there, I still work with Jim Beam Black on my barbecue team because they've been a sponsor of it for 15 or 16 years. So they provide us with a whole plethora of alcohol from Beam Suntory, which is great. And then, some people have meat sponsors. We also work with Tank Jackson is on my team from Holy City Hogs over in Charleston. And so Tank donates the hog as his contribution to the team, and he's got great hogs. But we've worked with meat sponsors in the past and various other ones.
Nice, man. You got to be willing to pretty much spend out what you would for a truck just to compete one competition.
Yes, you do.
Do Memphis in May.
Rusty would do Memphis in May, of course, because you already have the truck. So it's good to go.
I want to do it.
Yeah.
I want to. Yeah. It's just it's going to be a minute. I haven't even cooked the whole hog yet, and I'm the kind of guy that's like, well, if I'm going to do something, I'm not going to do ribs.
Yeah,
I'm going to be one of the 38 teams doing a whole hog.
Might as well.
Well, what you needed. The smart teams charge dues to all their members, and so. What you want to do is if you want to go to Memphis and you want to see what it's all about, then join a team and pay the dues. It's a whole lot cheaper, and go party and have a good time and learn something, and then figure out whether you want to do it yourself or not. We've had a whole plethora of chefs and great guys come through and be members on our team. And then some of them have gone on to start their own team, and some of them don't come back, and some of them come back every year.
That's a good point. Yeah. That's actually probably what I'll do because I want to do it.
I mean, if you want to come down, then give me a call and come. Yeah, come and be on the Peg Leg Porkers for a year and see what it's all about.
Dude, I'd be all about that life.
That's what we're talking about. Man, your team members are in trouble, Rusty. Their dues are going to be steep.
I know. We have a team. I'm sorry, guys. It's $4,000 each.
A month.
Yeah.
Jared's living out of a cardboard box, and Chad's wife just divorced him. So, but we're going to Memphis in May.
Yeah. So, speaking about partying and spirits and everything like that, let's touch a little bit on your product line. You have your own alcohol line there. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've got peg leg porker spirits, and our lineup right now includes our white label, our gray label, and our black label. It's a Tennessee straight bourbon, and it is distilled and aged in Tennessee. I'm a non-distilling producer, so I buy my bourbon from brokers that we have an established relationship with and have for years. And I bring that bourbon in, we debarrel it, we blend it and proof it, and then I developed a technique for filtering it through hickory charcoal. So we didn't want to do like a smoked product. I've never had a smoked alcohol that I thought was worth a shit. They're mostly bitter and acrid. And so we wanted to add the element of barbecue without it being overpowering or something that was going to turn you off. And I found through just various experiments that I could burn down coals in my pit, harvest those coals, and then after I debarrel that bourbon, run it through that hickory charcoal and get the desired effect that I wanted and the desired flavor profile that I wanted. We've since won bronze, silver, gold, double gold, platinum medals at San Francisco World Spirits, the SIP Awards. So we've had a lot of success with it. And it's doing well. We're now distributed in 7 states. We just picked up Louisiana, so now you can get it down in New Orleans and around the state of Louisiana. And then we're picking up Georgia and Kentucky next. We've already lined up distributors for those 2 states. That will put us in 9 states total right now.
Such a cool idea is to put it through hickory wood. Like, I think it's like, I don't drink anymore because I can't for medical reasons, right. But I used to love whiskey, and I would be able to tell you, like, I had them all. And so just the thought of that for me is, I'm just like, well, maybe I should start again. Hey,
you can't walk
one time. Come on now. But
I don't want to contribute to any health problems.
It's not, it's just one of those things. But, so the whiskey part of it, and, what was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought. But so you do the whiskey, and how does that work? So we have a whiskey company here in Utah called High West, and I think they won the Spirit Award in San Francisco. And I remember buying a bottle, and it was like bottle 130, and then they won the Spirit Award, and it just got national. It got crazy, and then prices went from $25 to now $60, stuff like that. Is that kind of the success you're seeing after winning that award and awards like that in bourbon? What do they do for you?
It's done all right for us. People at least know the name, and having the restaurant and having a presence or a brand that people recognize nationwide and sometimes globally has certainly helped with the bourbon. We've had it requested in SunTrust Stadium down in Atlanta. We've had it requested for the Savoy Hotel in London. At their famous bar. And so it's nice to win those awards, but at the end of the day, what liquor companies need to do is sell through. You got to get people that are going to buy it on a regular basis, not just grab it and put it on the shelf. I've been to High West, went to an event with Nissan trucks out in Park City there, and was able to, and we stayed on the ranch that High West built their distillery on. Which was really nice. I think it's called Blue Sky Ranch. And High West is a great product, and they've done a great job. But this is a tricky business that a lot of people don't get. A lot of craft distillers will go out of business because they've built small stills that are only able to produce enough to look good, but not to really ever make them any money. And so mainly they're selling T-shirts and sample bottles out of their gift shop. We chose to go a different route in the fact that we understand the business and the marketing of it and the volume of it. And so we chose to go out there and build a market and build a brand and tell our story and produce great product. We can contract distill. So this year we started laying down our own whiskey with a contract distiller in Tennessee. And we'll build a distillery when the demand is so high that we're forced to build a distillery. But, Angel's Envy, Van Winkle, Weller, none of those guys never had a distillery. Angel's Envy does now, but before they sold to Bacardi, they had never distilled a single drop themselves.
Right. Well, it's kind of like that old adage of the same in your barbecue restaurant. You don't really have a true customer until they come back. So
that's right.
So, but let's talk a little bit about you went over your spirits wins. Let's talk a little bit about some competition wins that you've had, that you've actually won. Obviously Memphis in May, you've competed there. Have you pulled out a grand championship out there? Came close?
I have not. No,
So-
I had never won a grand championship. I usually lose at barbecue competitions. The year that we took third in whole hog, the lady came and interviewed me, and she says, right before we found out we got in the finals, and she said, "What do you think your chances are?" And I sat back. I was sitting back in a chair and drinking a bourbon, and I looked at her and I said, "Honey, I've been losing at this fucking competition for 25 years. I don't expect that I'm going to win it right now." And I said, "I've made a living off of losing at this competition." And about 15 minutes later, we found out we were in the finals, and we took third place in whole hog that year. So it was fun and exciting. But, you know, I've had fun at competitions. I've learned a lot. We're a fierce competitor. We've done well, but we haven't ever taken a grand champion at a competition.
So you don't need a win to be successful. There we go, Rusty.
Shut up.
And, you know, here's the thing about it. When I first started at Memphis in May, you made the barbecue that you would make for your friends and family, and then you just put it in a damn box, and you know, you turned it in. And then when they came on site, you did your thing. Now, the flavor profiles and the methodologies have changed so much that modern day competitions are really a bastardization of normal barbecue that you would fix your friends or family. You're going to do stuff in a competition that you would not normally do at home, typically. And so that's where it's evolved and changed over the years. And I had a hard time with that. I don't like to change it up that much. And we've had fights inside our team on how much we were willing to change it up or bastardize it to get a win. And, so, you know, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's what people do these days. That's the way that competitions work. But it's a big change from what it was, you know, 20 years ago.
Yeah, and that's the same across the board. It's interesting, you know, I kind of wish it would go back to that. And you had like regulations where you couldn't use more than X amount of seasoning in your, you know, whatever. But right now, and we do competition, especially for KCBS, I like to say it's like a Frankenstein meat, you know, you don't even recognize it. You got three injections, you got 3 rubs, you got 3 sauces, you got a finishing dust, you've got, and then there's a rib in there somewhere.
Oh yeah. Yes. Some of these folks have got it down.
Yeah, but you've been part of that Memphis in May since pretty much day one, you and your family, correct?
My uncle competed in the very first Memphis in May. And, you know, you got this resurgence now of female pitmasters. In fact, my wife started last year with a team called I Only Smoke When I Drink, and she competed against me at Memphis in May. And you know, you have some high-profile women pitmasters now. Actually, the first winner at Memphis in May was a black female contestant named Bessie, who won the very first Memphis in May World Championship. And so I know that a lot of these women nowadays think that they're pioneers, but they were predated by Bessie, who came in and whipped everybody's ass at that competition, the very first one that there was. And so it's great to see women getting back into it. I noticed you got my friend Susie's shirt on there with Hey Grill Hey. I met her on the set of a show, and she's fabulous. But that's, you know, so then I've been cooking in Memphis in May now for, I think, 28 years.
Wow.
I think this year would have been my 28th year.
So do you know off the top of your head how many competitors there were at the very first one? Does anybody know?
I want to say there were around 12.
Okay. And now it's 200, over 200.
There's a lot down there now.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, about 270. The park runs for a solid mile of teams with huge booths. It's amazing. If you hadn't been, it's where the big boys play. It's funny because the MBN circuit has sort of been in this disarray for years, but the biggest names that you see in barbecue typically came out of that MBN circuit or that Memphis in May.
Yeah,
Rusty, I think we should do it, dude. I think I don't think about competing, but I think since it's going to be Memphis in October this year, we should just go out there and check
Memphis
it out.
in later year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Memphis May is kind of that way because we talked to, like I said, Chris Lilly, Leanne, all those guys, and that's what always gets brought up. Malcolm Reed, they always bring up Memphis in May. That's like the pinnacle of their cooks, and that's what they look forward to every single year. So I know we have some Utah cooks go down and cook it. That just seems really cool. But I want to switch gears just a little bit. So, like I said earlier, I discovered your podcast, and you have a bunch of guys, that you work with and do this podcast, and you guys just kind of hang out and talk everything. But you also have some pretty cool guests on it, and then just pop on. So tell us how that became a thing you guys do.
Yeah, I was sitting around with my buddy Shane Smith. We call him Sucker Shane. He's on the panel, and Shane and I've been friends since I think 5th grade. And I said something about maybe wanting to do a podcast, and he was in. And my right leg man, Steve Dresch, who's been cooking with me for 17 years and was a master welder by trade. He's the one that sounds a little bit like Boomhauer on there. I asked him about it, and he said, "Yeah, I'm in." And then Patrick Julian, who is another close friend that I've known since high school, and also my food service rep for Cisco. And so we started, in the very first one that we did, we just kind of rambled on. It wasn't structured, and so we rambled too much. You can tell I talk a lot. And so after that one, I said, well, that wasn't very good. And so I put together a format where we do a news of the day, a news of the weird, and then we interview our special guests. And we've had some great guests that are fun, and they enjoy it. It's live from Bullshit Corner. On the corner of my bar, my wife found me this little plaque that says Bullshit Corner, and that's typically where we sit when we drink. So we just literally set up the podcast right where we sat and drank on Friday afternoons, and we started recording it right in the middle of dinner service at the restaurant. And so customers walking by, you can hear the buzz in the background. And now a lot of times we do it on the second floor because it's too noisy downstairs. But it's been fun, and we've had some really cool people. I think one of the best ones was Shane's uncle, Bud Smith, from the Grand Ole Opry, the stage manager of the Grand Ole Opry. And we actually had him on twice. And Bud was just dynamite because he had all the facts and he had all these stories. And so we've had some really cool people on, and we've enjoyed doing it. We just need to be more consistent and do it more often.
Yeah, it's really cool because you guys, a lot of people, especially music people working where living where you live. And I haven't listened to that episode yet, but that strikes me because I love everything.
And that's on all major podcast formats, right?
I got mine on Apple.
Yeah. Spotify and Apple, and you can get it from our website. One of the best ones is my wife and I had an incident in Memphis in May called the infamous Slaw Incident of 1995. And I think that's our podcast episode 4 is listening to her version of that story and listening to my version of that story. There's two very different versions from two very different perspectives. But
I just listened to that one today. That was a good one.
Yeah. I mean, and I was right on that. She was completely wrong in her telling of that. But anyway, we had fun.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
Shooter on the Grassy Knoll is a good one. Where Dresch is talking about shaving his balls. So,
nice. And what's the name of that podcast?
It's called Live from B. If you look it up, you could look up Peg Leg Porker, and it's Live from BS Corner.
Cool. And I highly recommend it. It's just a fun time to listen to, especially if you're into barbecue. And it doesn't just touch on that. Even if you don't like barbecue, it's just a good time to listen. The stories you guys tell on there are really, really cool. Really, I'm really enjoying all of them. I usually, when I do, I listen to podcasts, I'll listen to, one or two. And next I find myself going to the next one. Okay. I'm going to have to listen to all of these. These are good.
We're good.
So let's just talk about what do you have in the pipe for Peg Leg? Is there anything coming up in the future you want to talk about?
Yeah, so we're opening a new restaurant. Hopefully, we've been dealing with this COVID-19 stuff, so we were shut down for 6 weeks by civil authority order with our mayor. And then we opened back up for takeout and to go for about a week. And then now we're back open with at 50% capacity. And so we're starting to get that crowd back up, which is nice. It had not been, we're down probably 60% on our volume, but we had already bought a piece of property that we were working on to open a new place called Bringle Smoking Oasis. And it's an old gas station that we're turning into a Texas-style barbecue place.
Okay.
Nice.
Can you hold on one second?
Sure can.
Hey, honey. Dwayne. What the fuck? I can't hear. All right, sorry.
I don't know. We should leave that in there. I like that. It just shows how you really are.
My wife is vacuuming back here.
That's what my wife does when she would do podcasts. She's right above me, and the girls' room's right above us in the studio, and she'll go in there and I'm like, lady, come on. Trying to friggin' do a podcast here.
So that's the restaurant you got to go to get brisket.
So now you don't have to go to Texas anymore if you're in Memphis or Nashville.
That's right. This is a really cool place. It's a triangular piece of property in the middle of a neighborhood that used to be very industrial and kind of trashy, and now it's really up and coming. Now they're building $350,000-$400,000 starter homes there. And a lot of young people have moved in. They're converting a lot of the old industrial warehouses into co-working space or office space and retail. And we found this little spot that was an old gas station. It's still got the center island with a canopy over it, and it's shaped like a triangle in between these three streets. And so it's going to have a lot of outdoor area. And be really cool, but inside the gas station part, we'll do a cafeteria style like Texas, and the meat slice by the pound, and everything by the pound. And it'll give us freedom to smoke different things that we don't do at Peg Leg. With Peg Leg, we put ourselves in a very narrow box, and we like it that way. With the Smoking Oasis, we won't have those restrictions. And it'll kind of be like, I don't know if you've ever been to Pig Beach up in Brooklyn, New York, but it'll kind of be that type of atmosphere. Outdoor, a lot of outdoor space and outdoor bars, and really fun.
So you're kind of the Nashville Danny Meyer, just kind of going into new places and building them up around you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we hope there's supposed to be about 700 apartments, 400 on one side and 350 on the other side, and then retail space on the other side. And that's where we came up with the Oasis name, because we're going to be surrounded by these tall buildings right in the middle of this neighborhood, and we're going to be a little smoking oasis right cool. there for people to walk to and hang out at.
So it's going to be like a little vortex of smoke in there, and they're all going to be hungry all the time.
We hope.
Do you ship right now? I understand you might. I think you do shipping, right, from Peg Leg. So if I wanted to order ribs,
if you go to our website, then you can click on the gold belly symbol, and we ship nationwide now. We ship our ribs and pulled pork, and then our sauce and rub, and our pork rinds go in that box as well.
And this gold belly thing, Lene Oxley, Loop, who you were on the barbecue brawl with, she got me into that. She told me, she's like, you have to try it. It's actually really, really good. Like, you got to be ordering gold belly. She says I'm spending hundreds of dollars on it. It's great.
It's great. They've been great to work with, and it helped us get that business up and going. And we had been working on it for about 2 years to make sure we had everything right and the way that we wanted to do it. We worked on our packaging and really took away some ideas from the Rendezvous package, which I ordered from several different people and looked at how their packaging was. Some of them were real shitty and some of them were great. And the one that I thought was the best was the Rendezvous. So we modeled ours after that, which is a cardboard box inside of another cardboard box. So there's no styrofoam to deal with our packaging. And we ship straight to your door overnight.
That's awesome. I need to get on that. I haven't done it yet. I was trepidate. You know, I don't know what I'm looking for here, but I need to get on it but I know once I do, my wife's gonna be looking at the bank statement. Excuse me, what are you buying?
He has a daily lunch from all
Nashville,
over
Tennessee. So cool, man. Where can everyone find you on the social medias, on anywhere?
Yeah, if you go to www.peglegporker.com, you can find us on the web. You can link to our podcast there. You can also link to the Gold Belly. And down at the bottom, you can link to our spirits or to our clothing or to our food company. You can find Peg Leg Porker merchandise on Amazon and also on Store Envy. And then you can go to sunterrapro.com, and we're working with Sunterra right now. They're building our smokers. So if you want a BMF 200 smoker, you can get it through Sunterra with our partnership with them. On Twitter, we're at Peg Leg Porker. On Instagram, we're at Peg Leg Porker. And I think now we're on a damn TikTok, something like that. And I think we're Peg Leg Porker on that as well.
I can't wait for the Peg Leg Porker
dance. If you haven't seen
dance.
our latest video, did you see our latest video that we put out on social media, our Rib Alert?
I did not see
I
that.
seen
No.
it yet. No. I just followed you guys on Insta.
Oh, you need
it's on TikTok?
Go look on our IGTV and look for our Rib Alert commercial. I think you'll like it.
Alrighty, we will do that as soon as we get
or
off.
on Twitter. Or it's also on our Facebook page. We're also on Facebook. So Peg Leg Porker on Facebook. You can see our Rib Alert commercial. I think you'll like it.
That's awesome. I have to check it out. You also, I just want to touch you guys all how smokers, the BMF smokers called Bad Motherfucker. Is that what they're called? Is that what you call
it? Yeah, the BMF 200. Yeah, it'll hold 160-pound whole hogs. And it's one of the best built smokers on the market. They are about 1,600 pounds, solid carbon steel, or you can get it in stainless. But we can load that firebox with a load of really good quality charcoal, either like a Kingsford Professional or a Royal Oak Chef Select, and 2 sticks of hickory. And we can typically get about an 8 to 10 hour burn out of that without touching it.
Wow.
It's got a built-in PID controller and draft fan. And so it's a real great unit, especially for cooking whole hog.
Yeah, they're pretty slick looking too. The 100's a little bit smaller, and obviously the 200 is probably more than double that size from the look of it. So yeah, that actually.
Yeah, a lot bigger.
Well, cool. Well, hey, Carey, we really appreciate your time coming on and talking to us. It's been a real pleasure for us to talk to you. And hey, man.
Yeah, guys, I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, man. Hey, have a good one. We'll talk to you soon.